An EU getaway in an ancient castle to save the European economy and tweaks to the EU-Mercosur deal in Strasbourg. Welcome to Brussels, My Love, the podcast with me, Maeve McMahon. Coming up this week, we take a look at what's at stake for European leaders on their informal retreat in the Belgian countryside, and we bring you up to speed on the EU-Mercosur deal. A warm welcome to our guests this episode. Ambassador Pedro Miguel da Costa e Silva, Brazil's ambassador to the European Union. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
Adelaide Charlier, Belgian environmental activist. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
And Teresa Kuchler, correspondent with the Swedish daily newspaper Svenska Dagbladet.
Good morning.
Good afternoon, good morning, good night to all our listeners. Whatever time it is that you're listening to us, we're thrilled to have you with us here on the podcast. And first, I'd like to start with the ambassador. You have been in Brussels for 4 years?
3 years and a half.
3 years and a half. Before you were in Geneva, Ottawa, Madrid. How's Brussels treating you?
Very nicely. No complaints. Very happy here.
The rain. It's raining again today.
Very livable city. Love walking around, looking at the houses.
Well, the houses, I must say, are stunners. But professionally, it's been a really interesting time because the last few years it's been all about the EU-Mercosur deal. And we're always getting the European perspective. So tell us, what's in it for Brazil?
Well, I was thinking today that this agreement's like running an ultra marathon, right? It's a lot of work, and you need a lot of patience, and you need to understand how the machine here works. So this is an important agreement for us, and we're moving forward very quickly in our Congress with the agreement, and we're looking forward for a provisional application.
So Brazil moving very quickly on the application, but Brussels a bit slower.
Yes, I mean, that's in terms of concretely the process, but maybe the reasons why there is still a rough path here in Europe, which is nothing new, but we can for sure talk about the arguments coming from the agricultural side. But on the environmental side, I think NGOs and movements are not yet today. They don't feel comfortable with this agreement because it's still really lacking assurance to make sure that this agreement is not going to weaken our environmental policies, which are already today very at stake, and to make sure that it's not going to impact also directly the deforestation on the other side of the world. I just came back from Brazil, where I stayed 1 month in the Xingu region, in the region of Para, and also after COP30. This is a moment where we also have to listen to the ones who will be directly impacted by this agreement on the land of the Amazon forest.
We'll bring in the ambassador in just a minute on that. But first, Teresa Kuchler, you've been reporting on this Mercosur for decades.
Yes.
It's been under discussion for 25 years.
30, I think they started mentioning it already 30 years ago.
So how have you been reporting on this and making sure that you explain it properly to your Swedish readers?
Mercosur, I think, first of all, I think it will pass. I think now it will pass, and it's because of Donald Trump. It's because of this kind of new notion of needing new friends. Europe needs new friends in the world. The tide is changing a little bit. And to be honest, all 27 member states want this agreement. I know that 4 member states voted against it in Council.
Ireland?
But my speculation, my hypothesis is that nobody blocked the text. They have stalled the text for 30 years. This time, nobody blocked it, not even the 4 countries who voted. So I think that they all want it. But there's an election in France next year. You don't want to be seen as the enemy of the French farmers. So I think France voted against it, knowing very well there will still be a majority in favour. France wants to sell Renault cars and, Molinex dishwashers, and that they want to sell more cheese and everything to Brazil and to the other 3 countries. So they want the deal. But it's all a little bit of a theatre with the European farmers.
It's all political. I mean, we can take a listen to the farmers. They've been on the streets. And of course, Ursula von der Leyen, the Commission President, did speak to them at the recent EU summit. She sat down on the sideline of the summit to speak to the farmers. The farmers did get a lot of safeguards.
Let's talk about one of the safeguards that has been tried to put in place or proposed on the side of the EU, right, is this bilateral safeguard. Today, it's not yet accepted on the side of the Mercosur countries, and this is really important for farmers. It was one of the key proposals to reassure the farmers in the streets today. But today, one of the reasons that this safeguard might not be put in place is the use of another mechanism that is in the deal right now, is the rebalancing mechanism. So really, this idea that it will impact directly our agreement, the market, and therefore, if you pass this, you will have to compensate. You will have to pay. So it's actually putting us in a lot of troubles. This idea now of trying to find ways to support our farmers. And if we go into this detail, I'm also scared about our future environmental policies, because I hope we will have more, because we need more. And if this mechanism is being used also from the Mercosur countries to impact our environmental policies, this is a real worry that we have here in Europe.
Ambassador, how would you respond to the concerns there that Adelaide so eloquently described?
Yes, I think that the first thing I need to stress is our commitment to the environmental agenda. She mentioned she has just been in Brazil. We hosted COP30. If you look at what we put on the table and what we achieved, I think that our commitment with the environment, I don't think nobody can question it, as our commitment with the protection of indigenous populations, traditional communities, small farmers. So it's really hard to believe that a government such as us, a society such as us, that has such a commitment with the environmental agenda, that we are going to go for a deal that is against the agreement. Completely on the contrary, this is one of the most advanced agreements in terms of trade and sustainable development, and reinforces all our international commitments. You have the precautionary principle if the EU wants to use it. We have all the sustainability commitments are in there. And we have things to foster trade for women, trade for the indigenous communities, the bioeconomy. So I can understand that the farmers don't want competition, but I have a lot of trouble understanding those who speak for the environment to be against an agreement that will reinforce cooperation and coordination with our countries. And I would, if
bring
you allow
us inside
me,
those talks. Bring us inside the negotiations.
They were very tough and lasted many years. I was one of the chief negotiators. But I can assure you that this is an agreement that is very modern, contrary to those that say that it's outdated. And it has all the clauses that a modern agreement needs. And if you look at the world outside and you compare this agreement with what is going on, this will strengthen cooperation in all these issues. And it's an agreement based on multilateral rules. If people say they want to stand for multilateralism, you have to stand for an agreement such as this. The basis of the agreement are the multilateral agreements, right?
So when you saw the vote then in the Parliament recently, the majority of the MEPs sending this to the European Court of Justice, what message does that send to you?
I think that there are two things. The MEPs have their political agenda. They have their constituencies, but it was a stalling tactic, because if you look at the questions, the answer to those questions, in my opinion, are very clear. You mentioned the rebalancing mechanism. The rebalancing mechanism has nothing to do with the safeguards. The rebalancing mechanism will only be used both by the EU and by Mercosur, because the EU can also use it if someone adopts a legislation that affects your rights within the agreement. And if you stop and think about this, if you enter into an agreement with another partner, you expect that agreement to be respected. I want to tone down this discussion on the rebalancing, because the rebalancing mechanism is a non-violation complaint that you have at the WTO. If both sides adopt their legislations, whatever legislations, outside the agreement, without affecting the content and the expectations inside the agreement, there's nothing to be worried about. So this is a discussion that if you think of it in different terms,
it is emotional, because people are thinking of the food on their plate. They're concerned.
But
let's bring in some more voices. Teresa, and then...
I think what we're doing here right now is, like, you hear the arguments from the environmental side, we hear the arguments from Brazil, but we need to understand here that this discussion's been going on for 30 years, or 25 formally, but it's done. Like, it's done. The book is closed. The text is done. The final sum. So we can go back into the same discussions we had 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Yeah. It doesn't matter. The text is done. And now we're talking about final tweaks. Yeah. And tweaks in the EU world means really that, tweaks. Because in an EU situation with 27 countries, plus 4 countries in Latin America, then we have... That's not tweaks. That's reopening the books, which is what people are the most scared of. Always here, because, it can take 10 years or 25 years. So again, like, your arguments are but it's over. Like, it's over.
But so the idea is to stop debating and to stop talking about the impact that it will directly have today.
And that is true. But the text is not, we're not in a situation where we're fighting over the text before we finish the text is finished.
So if I can just highlight then, sadly, if we just take, for example, deforestation, now the limited estimated, I'm taking the lowest number of estimation, is that once the agreement has been put in place and will be implemented, the deforestation will rise by minimum 5% in the 4 countries. It's studies, no problem. You can contest with other studies if you want. I think we all agree that we want to reinforce the conversation. We want trades. I mean, no one is against that, okay? But we also need a vision of 2050, of the future. And I'm sadly, even if you're saying it's done, I understand that people are fighting until the last minute to get the last bit that can save as much as possible the environment and human rights.
I think that we need to think this issue a bit differently if we really want to engage into a conversation. Because stop for a minute and say, there is no agreement. We won't have an agreement. Trade between the Mercosur countries and the EU will continue. We are your biggest agri-food supplier. But then put it in context. If you look at the numbers, you will be surprised. What does the EU represent in our trade? You're half of what we export to China. If you look at what we export in terms of soy, meat, everything, you think you're going to make a big difference in what happens, but you aren't. You're not the biggest trading partner. We export to you what we export to the US. But let me finish here. These studies that say that deforestation is going to increase are just studies that are made by people who don't like the agreement. If you look at the studies from people who like the agreement,
what are they gaining? What are they gaining from not having an agreement?
Deforestation is not driven solely by agriculture. Deforestation, the protection of the biomes, it's a very complex issue. It involves sometimes illegal mining. It involves the issue of poverty. But you have to understand this. 63% of Brazil is biomes, okay? It's twice the size of the EU. We're talking here about, people lose a bit the perspective what we're talking. We have all these different biomes that we have protected.
And what's your Green Deal? Does Brazil have a Green Deal?
Of course, we have our environmental plans. We have the fighting against climate change plans. There's a full commitment. We had our Minister of Indigenous Affairs. She came to Brussels. She didn't speak a word against the agreement. Minister of our Environment, which is one of the most renowned environmental activists in the world, she doesn't speak against the agreement. So there are voices against the agreement, which I respect, but there are voices in favor of the agreement. And the idea that an instrument of cooperation is going to destroy the environment is just a narrative, which I respect. It's a political view. We have to respect political views, but it's just a political view. The problem is that this agreement is not being discussed on the basis of objective facts. It's being discussed on the basis of a political agenda. From the extreme left, from the extreme right, from the environment, from the center, all of them, from the farmers, everybody has a political agenda. So it's not like all of them are presenting these very objective facts on the table.
So how do you feel, Adelaide, about being told you have an agenda?
Yeah, no, but of course, I'm actually wondering here, who am I? I'm a citizen based in Brussels. My agenda, I don't have one. I just got out of university and I'm super worried about the environment. It's been 7 years that I'm trying to read as much as possible. I have a study that's coming out from Science that talks about the importation of soya and beef from Brazil, who for a part, 22%, they mentioned here for soya, who is linked from far or from close to illegal deforestation. So as a young person based in Europe, of course I'm worried. And I don't have an agenda other than I don't want to contribute. Whether if we are a small actor as the EU, I'm not Chinese, but I'm European. And what I can say is that I don't want to contribute, even if it's little, to reinforce this narrative that, but for our industries and for competitiveness, we have to put that aside and we don't have so much time to make sure that our priority is actually defending the environment.
Okay, even though that is the mood, isn't it, in Brussels this week? We saw the Antwerp meeting with Ursula von der Leyen, the EU summit, which was all about competitiveness.
And it's all politics. Everybody has a political agenda, even you, Mr. Ambassador. I think we all, it's all politics.
I'm a public servant.
I know, but it's still, I mean, Adelaide says something important here. You're just a person, you have ideas and you have studies, and I think you're absolutely absolutely right. You should fight for your ideas. I think maybe as somebody who I try to kind of encompass the whole European Union versus Brazil, more kind of a bloc. I think for me, the biggest irony of this deal is that maybe we have Donald Trump to thank for finishing 25 years of fighting. Well, to thank for, maybe for others to blame for. And I think Jupiter aligned with Mars here with Donald Trump's politics. But I am also thinking that those little tweaks can be important. The court, the European Parliament brought this to court, and I think that's going to postpone the deal with maybe a year.
Could be a year, could be two.
A year, could be two. So there's still time. There's definitely still time for the final tweaks, and you should, bring your studies and bring your big guns and fight for it.
You mentioned the word competitiveness as well, and that was the big discussion this week in Brussels. Adelaide, what should EU leaders be doing right now? Because they do need to get the balance right. Because the EU is lagging behind. Have you read Mario Draghi's report?
Yes. I have.
400 pages of doom and gloom.
Impossible to read everything. It has become a Bible in Europe.
I don't get paid enough to read reports.
No, I think let's all agree that we know we are in a race that we already lost. Okay? So starting from this point, if we agree, I'm worried for several aspects. First, I understand that we need to reindustrialize Europe, okay? No one is going to go against it. Even as an activist, someone who is part of youth climate movements across Europe, coordinating our vision together, we're like, we understand and we want that. But we want to make sure that the workers are respected in their work. And we want to make sure that when we are massively subsidizing new industries, our current industries today in Europe, that they respect some of our values.
Pay, I guess that's the question, right? Do we borrow and just leave it to the future generations?
There is the who should pay, who are, I think, for me, some are really responsible of some of the consequences today. In Antwerp, there was a huge meetup with leaders, mostly from different industries, but it was really led by the chemical industry. And it's true, it's one of our strengths in Europe and in Belgium particularly. So I understand, I'm not like putting this as a black and white situation, but I'm also worried of using our weakness today of Europe, our industrial weakness, to make sure that we take away everything that allows our health in Europe to be respected. So, for example, in the chemical industry, we need to make sure that we keep protecting our health. So we cannot just agree that because of simplification, more deregulation, we are not going to make sure that we check every toxicity that we are or every substance, chemical substance that we're putting on the market.
Deregulation coming.
And that's why I'm talking about it. I'm really scared because we're not hearing. Yesterday at the meeting, there was not the health experts from across Europe telling us the impact of these substances on our health. And I'm not even talking only if we don't want to care about our health. I'm also talking about economically. It's going to cost us, and it's going to cost us so much money to repair the consequence of toxic bodies across Europe, right? So I just want to make sure that right now, when we reindustrialize, because we will and because we are, can we just keep our values, which are, let's keep our standards. That I don't want to let go of, because I'm a proud European, thanks to our values.
And Brussels was always so proud of that's Brussels effect, setting the standards. Ambassador, how did you view that summit taking place this week in Brussels? Any tips or advice perhaps for EU leaders?
Not for me to comment. It's an internal issue. The only part of it that I follow with a lot of interest is the impact it can have on my country, on bilateral relations. We also have discussions about industrial policy, about how we modernize, how we compete in the world. One way is trade agreements, but we also have our domestic politics. And we also had a meeting here of countries of the World Trade Organization talking about how you're going to reform the WTO. So everybody's thinking about these issues. Having worked on trade for many years, the only message that I would leave, I don't even know if it's a message from the Brazilian government, it's certainly a message from a Brazilian diplomat, is that we have to be careful sometimes about these agendas of buy US, buy Brazil, buy Europe, because if all of us go down the road of buying just our own products, we are going to close ourselves. And I think that the exchange is cooperation. I believe in trade. And so I think that we can work together and we can progress, our societies can progress together by keeping open to each other. So that I think it's a bit the essence of diplomacy. So that would be my comment, but it's not to me to comment on what European leaders are deciding among themselves.
And of course, Teresa, this is an informal summit, so no obligation here to have conclusions, but by March they need to have conclusions, and indeed by summer, because the clock is ticking.
Deregulation, this buzzword of the year, it's a little bit laughable, because we know that companies want regulation they profit from. They don't want regulations that they lose from. I mean, we know that this is this Buy Europe clause that the ambassador mentioned here. For instance, I come from Sweden, where we build the Volvo car. Okay, a Volvo has components from 40 different countries. So for Volvo, they don't want the Buy Europe clause. It would be way more expensive for the Volvo factory to buy Swedish-priced components for their Volvo cars. So they don't want that particular regulation. But of course, Volvo might be in favor of some other regulations that they profit from. All companies want what they profit from. Companies don't want to have regulation if it means they have to pay more environmental fees or have more rules on how to treat workers, or, I don't know, freights, whatever. But they want the regulations that they profit from. So I find the whole obsession with this word is
Have you seen the speech yesterday or the day before of the leader of Germany, the chancellor?
No.
He said we need to deregulate. He uses the word, so it's not only me.
And Commission President using it, the polls are using it.
It's really serious.
But it's also
I understand your points, but I also really want to underline that at the start of the second term of Ursula von der Leyen, it was about simplification. And it's understandable. But 2 years later, we are about deregulation. So there is something here. Like, we have to underline that there's narrative is taking the space. And I understand that it's true, because some companies, for Omnibus 1, if we want to go into the details, came out, and huge multinationals saying we don't want this. We want to be regulated on human rights and environment, but it still happens.
But there is this kind of false image that those bureaucrats in Brussels, those faceless bureaucrats, what they sit all day long and do, they come up with stupid regulations that nobody, as if, civil servants here just for fun would say, I wonder how we're going to, annoy the car companies today or the chemical companies. Of course they don't. They're civil servants. If we do adopt regulations, it's because the 27 member states want them and sign up to them. It's a very kind of Brexit kind of
they
narrative.
Sign up them, but they sign up to them in
bureaucrat.
private, but then trash them in public.
Yeah,
but what we are seeing
exactly.
as well this week is interesting new alliances. We've seen Friedrich Merz cozying up to Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, Bart de Wever also in their gang, and then Emmanuel Macron a little bit on the outside. Just an interesting observation, especially given that it's Valentine's Day this weekend. I don't know if anyone even likes Valentine's Day. I'm certainly not a big fan myself. But just to end on a lighter note, if you were to have dinner with a European leader or a global leader, who would you choose to go with? Who'd like to start?
It's really hard.
Okay, I'll give you time to think.
Yeah.
I wanted to say,
Teresa.
for my job's sake, I have to say I would like to have dinner with Vladimir Putin and get inside his head and maybe serve him a vodka or two too many and see what can happen. But now, actually, after we spoken to the Brazilian ambassador here, who told us that there was a carnival in Rio going on right now, I think my Valentine's Day would be if I can go with your team here. Get a plane, fly to Rio, and please take me to some beautiful Brazilian place for a nice dinner
To dance
and some music
some
and
samba.
dance.
The date is on. Can I crash?
Can I crash? Oh, I love the Carnival in Brazil. Ambassador, what about you?
The sad thing is that we here don't have the carnival break. I have to work during carnival. Can you believe that? So I would
That
love to
hurt.
take you, but you would have to convince my government to give me holidays for that. We have pre-carnival, we have carnival, and we have post-carnival. That's how long we celebrate it. My answer to your question, I thought about it, is I would like to invite the 27 agricultural ministers of the EU to eat a barbecue in Brazil.
Oh, wow.
So that we can change the tune of the music. Since we're talking about carnival, we have to talk about the music, right?
So you're
this
making
would
the
be-
call here on Brussels, My Love, the podcast. If you're
boy.
listening, agricultural ministers, get ready for that barbecue in Brazil. And you might need a reporter to come along.
But I will spend my Valentine's dinner with my wife, who is Portuguese. It's the only European leader that I want to spend my
That's beautiful.
Valentine with.
That's beautiful. We need a bit of love.
I think you
Real
have to
love.
do that.
Real love. So final
Yeah.
word with you.
I would love to crash maybe the Valentine of the leader of CIFIC and Ursula von der Leyen. If together we could have a date, the three of us, I would be very interested in where the conversation is going.
Okay, let's see if we can sneak you into that one time. Adelaide, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Teresa Kushler as well from Svenska Dagbladet, and Ambassador Pedro Miguel de Costa e Silva, Brazil's ambassador to the European Union. Thank you so much for
Thank
being our
you.
guest. It was a
Thank
pleasure
you.
to
Thanks.
have you all. I'd also like to thank all those behind the scenes who got the show on the road, our sound technician David Prodheim, our podcast producers Alice Carnivale and Noah Schumann, and to our social media manager Rebecca Spinazzo. And if you're not already, you can listen to this series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on euronews.com or Euronews YouTube channel. And if you like what you hear, do leave us a review and spread the word about Brussels My Love, the podcast. See you next time.